He stood on the 18th green with a body that had been broken, rebuilt, shattered again, and somehow still standing. His legs held together by metal rods. His spine carrying the memory of surgeries most people would never survive. His reputation buried under years of headlines that tore apart everything the world thought it knew about him. And yet there he was, still swinging, still competing, still refusing to disappear. Most people see Tiger Woods, and they think they already know the story. The trophies, the records, the fall. But here is what nobody tells you. The fall did not begin the night of the car crash. It did not begin with the scandal. It did not begin when the sponsors walked away one by one. The collapse of Tiger Woods began in a quiet backyard in Cypress, California, when a little boy who had not yet learned how to feel was being trained to win. What was stolen from him was not a championship or a marriage or a reputation. What was stolen was his childhood, his identity, and his right to ever be wrong. And the most shocking part of this story is not how far he fell. It is the secret reason he could never stop himself from falling. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear will completely change the way you see greatness, sacrifice, and the unbearable price of being perfect. To understand why Tiger Woods became the most complicated athlete in American history, you have to go back to a place that never made the highlight reels. You have to go back to Earl Woods and the system he built around his son before that son was old enough to understand what was being done to him. Earl was a Green Beret, a Vietnam veteran who had developed a philosophy about mental toughness that was rooted not in warmth or encouragement, but in psychological pressure designed to break a person down and rebuild them as something harder. When Tiger was barely old enough to hold a club, Earl began running what amounted to psychological warfare sessions disguised as golf training. He would make noise while Tiger was mid-swing. He would talk, whistle, jingle coins in his pocket, say distracting things, all in an effort to train his son to perform under stress. The goal was not just to teach Tiger how to hit a golf ball. The goal was to rewire his brain so that external pressure produced zero internal reaction. What that meant in real terms was that Tiger was not trained to manage emotions. He was trained to eliminate them. Feelings were not something to understand or process. They were distractions, weaknesses, things that had to be removed from the system entirely. And when a child grows up being taught that their feelings are obstacles, they do not simply learn how to win. They learn something far more dangerous. They learn how to disappear inside themselves. The practice sessions were not measured in hours, but in repetitions. Perfect repetitions. There was no room for the kind of exploration that most kids experience in sport. No room to try something new and fail at it and laugh about it and try again. Every deviation from perfection had consequences. Not always physical consequences, but emotional ones, the weight of disappointment, the pressure of expectation, the unspoken message that being less than perfect was not acceptable. Tiger did not grow up afraid of losing. He grew up afraid of existing in a way that was less than flawless. That is a very different kind of fear. And that fear does not go away when the cameras are on. It gets bigger. By the time Tiger was appearing on television as a toddler, demonstrating his swing to Bob Hope and Mike Douglas, the transformation had already begun. The world saw a prodigy. They saw a child with extraordinary talent and a smile that made everyone feel good. They did not see the hours that had already passed on the practice range. They did not see the system operating quietly underneath the surface. And they certainly did not see the child inside, who was being steadily replaced by something engineered for public consumption. The junior golf circuit should have been a place of learning, of growing, of understanding that mistakes are part of becoming better. But for Tiger, junior tournaments were just more tests. More opportunities to prove the system worked. Every victory raised the bar. Every loss, however rare, sent a signal that more work was needed. The other kids around him were playing golf. Tiger was executing a mission. And when you are executing a mission from the age of 3, you do not really get a childhood. You get a preparation. And what you are being prepared for is not happiness. It is dominance. And the cost of that dominance is something that does not show up on any trophy. When Tiger Woods turned professional in 1996, the golf world did not just welcome him. It held its breath. Here was a young black man with a father who had described his son as having the potential to change the world, not just the sport. The expectation was not merely that he would win tournaments. The expectation was that he would be transformational on a scale that went far beyond athletics. And almost immediately he delivered. The 1997 Masters was not just a victory. It was a statement. He did not win by a small margin. He won by 12 strokes. He was 21 years old. He wore the green jacket with the kind of calm that made seasoned commentators search for new words, because the words they already had did not quite capture what they were witnessing. But here's the thing about becoming an icon at 21. When the world transforms you into a symbol, they stop seeing the person. They see the symbol. And a symbol is not allowed to be tired. A symbol is not allowed to be confused or sad or uncertain. A symbol cannot walk into a room and say, "I need help figuring out who I am." A symbol must always represent what people project onto it. And what they projected onto Tiger Woods was perfection. Absolute, unbreakable, almost supernatural perfection. Every shot was analyzed. Every expression was studied. Every reaction to a missed putt or a bad bounce became part of the ongoing narrative about whether he was still worthy of the title everyone had given him. There was no private Tiger. There was only the version the world had decided he was. Brands came flooding in. Nike, Buick, American Express, Tag Heuer. By the mid-2000s, he was earning more money from endorsements than from golf itself. And the image he represented in those campaigns was always the same thing. Discipline, control, excellence. The idea that if you worked hard enough and focused deeply enough, you could rise above every limitation. It was a powerful message. It was also, in a very important way, a fiction, because it left out the human being entirely. It left out the fact that control exercised over a long enough period without release becomes its own form of pressure. That perfection maintained without rest is not strength. It is a structure waiting to crack. And the cracks, though invisible to the public, had been forming for a very long time. The marriage to Ellen Nordegren in 2004 seemed to offer something that Tiger had never really had. A private life. A space outside the machine. 2 children. a home in Florida that was not a tournament hotel or a press conference room. And for a period, from the outside looking in, it appeared as though he had found what most people assumed must always have been the goal: victory on the course and happiness off it. But the two lives that Tiger had been living for years did not simply resolve themselves because he had found love and built a family. The pattern that had formed quietly over years, the need to escape the pressure of his own image, the search for spaces where he did not have to perform, where he was not expected to be the icon that the world demanded, that pattern did not disappear. It continued, it deepened, and it operated in the shadows of a life that looked, to everyone watching, completely under control. What the world did not know was that Tiger had been living a second life for years. Not the life of the perfect husband and father and champion. A different life. A hidden life. One that existed in direct opposition to everything his public image represented. And maintaining two entirely separate realities is not something that a person can sustain indefinitely, no matter how disciplined they are, no matter how many years they have spent training their mind to operate under pressure. Because keeping a secret is not the same as controlling a golf swing. A golf swing responds to repetition. A secret grows on its own. It expands. It develops weight and momentum that eventually becomes impossible to contain. And then on a November night in 2009, the containment ended. The incident in the driveway. The crash that woke the neighbors. The story that began as a small item on a local news feed, and within hours had become the most discussed event in American sports. What followed was not a single revelation, but a cascade. Name after name. Story after story. Each one arriving before the previous one had fully been processed. The public did not just learn that Tiger Woods had been unfaithful. They learned that the version of Tiger Woods they had believed in had never fully existed. And that was a different kind of loss. Not the loss of a hero, though that was part of it. The loss of the story they had told themselves about what he represented. About discipline and control, and the idea that some people really were different from the rest. Ellen Nordegren took the children and left. The sponsors began calling their agencies. Nike held on. Most of the others did not. The press conferences were painful to watch. Not because of what was said, but because of what was visible beneath the carefully controlled delivery. Here was a man who had spent his entire life training to show nothing, and even he could not fully hide the weight of what was happening to him. What most people remember about the years that followed is the absence. Tiger was gone from golf for a long time, and when he came back, he was not the same. The swing had changed. The body was different. And something else was different too, something harder to name, but unmistakably present. He was still competing, still grinding, still showing up to tournaments with that famous focus in his eyes. But the wins came less frequently, and the injuries came more. Back surgeries, one after another. For in total, each one designed to solve a problem that the previous one had not fully resolved. And between the surgeries were long periods of pain that did not care about his history or his achievements or the number of major championships his name was attached to. Chronic pain does not negotiate. It does not grant exceptions for greatness. It does not step aside because you have responsibilities or because the world is watching or because you have spent your entire life proving that your body is under your command. It simply exists, every morning when you wake up, every night when you try to sleep, in every movement that once was thoughtless and is now a calculation. And for a person whose entire identity had been built around the absolute reliability of their physical performance, chronic pain was not just a physical challenge. It was an existential one. There was a period when Tiger was taking prescription pain medication to manage what his back was doing to him. And in 2017, something happened that removed the last remaining layer of the public image in a single moment. He was found by police in the early hours of the morning, sitting in his car, disoriented, unable to properly explain himself. The test showed no alcohol. What it showed was the presence of multiple prescription drugs. The photographs taken by the police that night circulated everywhere. And what people saw in those photographs was a man they did not recognize. Not because his face had changed, but because the thing that had always been present in his face, that absolute controlled intensity, was entirely gone. What they saw instead was someone who was simply exhausted. And in a way, that image told a more complete story than anything that had come before it. Recovery is not a moment. It is a direction. And for Tiger Woods, the direction began quietly, without announcement, without cameras, in the daily work of physical therapy and making different choices about how to manage the pain and the pressure that had defined his life for so long. Nobody saw most of it. Nobody was invited to see it. And perhaps that is why, when the 2019 Masters arrived, nobody was truly prepared for what happened. He had not won a major championship in 11 years. His body had been through 4 back surgeries. His reputation, though partially rehabilitated in the eyes of many, carried permanent marks that nothing could erase. He was 43 years old, and he was in contention at Augusta. The final round of the 2019 Masters was one of the most emotionally charged events in the history of American sports. Not because of what it meant for the record books, though it meant a great deal for those, but because of what it meant for everyone watching who had followed this story from the beginning. When Tiger walked up the 18th fairway with the gallery roaring around him and the outcome no longer in question, there was something in the air that was not just celebration. It was recognition. This was not the triumph of a machine. This was the triumph of a human being who had been broken in almost every way a person can be broken and had somehow found enough left inside to come back and do something extraordinary one more time. When he finished and walked off the course, he was surrounded by his children. His son Charlie was there. His daughter Sam was there. And the image of Tiger holding his son, pressing his face into that embrace, carried a weight that had nothing to do with golf. It carried everything he had been through. Everything that had been lost and could not be recovered. Everything that had changed. And in that moment, the thing that mattered was not the title. It was the presence of a father with his children. A man who was still here. Then in February 2021, everything nearly ended. A single-car accident on a winding road in Los Angeles. The SUV left the road at high speed, rolled multiple times, and came to rest in a wooded area off the highway. When emergency responders reached the vehicle and found Tiger inside, the condition of his right leg was so severe that doctors would later say there were real conversations about whether amputation was necessary. Multiple fractures, shattered bones, damage to the ankle and foot that required immediate and extensive surgery just to stabilize what was there. He survived, and within months he was posting videos of himself walking, carefully with a cane but walking. The medical community called his survival remarkable. They called his ability to begin moving again remarkable. But Tiger himself, in the rare interviews he gave during the recovery, said something that seemed to shift the entire frame of the conversation. He said that returning to competitive golf was no longer the goal. He said that being able to be there for his kids, to watch his son play, to have a life that was not defined entirely by what he could accomplish on a course, that was what mattered. And whether that was fully true in every quiet moment or not, the fact that he said it, the fact that it seemed to come from a place that was genuine, said something important about the journey he had traveled. Because the Tiger Woods who left his father's practice range at 18 with a flawless game and no permission to feel anything would never have said those words. That version of Tiger did not have access to that kind of honesty. That version had been trained to be a machine. And machines do not talk about their children. Machines do not talk about what really matters. Machines talk about targets. There is a version of this story that ends neatly. The fallen champion who finds redemption. The broken man who rebuilds. The sinner who becomes whole again. That version of the story is satisfying. It has a shape that the human brain finds comfortable. But the real story does not end that cleanly. The real story is messier and more honest than that, and in its mess it is actually more meaningful. Tiger Woods is not a redeemed man in the Hollywood sense. The damage that was done, both to others and to himself, does not disappear because he came back and won a tournament or because he stood beside his son on a golf course. The people who were hurt were hurt. The years that were taken from his children during the chaos of the scandal and the recovery were taken. Ellen Nordegren built a new life, and that is her story to tell, not his. The things that happened cannot be made not to have happened. What can be said is something different, and in some ways more powerful. What can be said is that a human being who was never taught how to be human, who was shaped from the earliest age into an instrument designed for one specific purpose, found a way, after everything collapsed, to become something more complicated and more real than an instrument. A person who learned, at great cost, that his value was never in the victories. That the victories were always secondary to something he had never been given permission to pursue. The Earl Woods who placed a club in his son's hands and decided to create a champion was not entirely wrong about Tiger's potential. But he was wrong about what it would cost. He was wrong about what the price of that kind of perfection would be. And Tiger Woods spent his entire life paying a bill he never agreed to run up. What remains now is not the image. The image is gone, replaced by something harder to frame but more honest. What remains is a man in his late 40s with a body held together by hardware and willpower, with a complicated legacy, with children he is still learning how to be present for, with a relationship to the sport that gave him everything and took almost as much back. What remains is someone who is still here, still walking, still occasionally competing, still refusing to completely disappear from the game that has defined him since he was old enough to stand. And maybe that more than any of the trophies, more than any of the Sunday afternoon back nines wearing red, more than any moment of athletic brilliance that made the world stop and stare, maybe that is the most Tiger Woods thing about him. Not that he was great, not that he fell, but that after everything, he is still going. Not perfectly, not the way he was designed to go, but going. And when a person who was built to be a machine discovers, through loss and pain and consequence, that being a human being is not a weakness to be eliminated, but the only thing that was ever real, that is not a small thing. That is actually everything. The story of Tiger Woods is not a story about golf. It has never been a story about golf. It is a story about what happens when a society decides that a child exists to serve an image. About what perfection costs the person who is asked to embody it. About the long, painful, unglamorous work of becoming real after spending a lifetime being flawless. And about the one thing that all of the discipline and all of the training and all of the winning could never provide. And that is the simple, quiet, difficult right to be a human being. He is still working on that. We all are.